It was a Thursday morning like any other. I woke up early, as I always did, at 5:30 a.m. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the coffee machine in the kitchen. I rubbed my eyes and ran my fingers through my disheveled hair, still groggy from the night's sleep. Sophie was already up, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee. Her brown hair was tied back in a messy bun, just like it had been for the last 15 years. She looked beautiful as always. I sat down across from her, gave her a quick kiss on the cheek, and asked how she was doing. Sophie always had a way of making mornings feel like a ritual, something calming about our routine. As the kids got ready for school, we shared small talk about nothing in particular. Life felt good, simple, comfortable. After breakfast, I grabbed my briefcase and checked the documents I needed for the investor meeting at the office. It was a big day. The company had been pushing for a new project, and I was expected to lead the pitch. I double-checked my watch. I was running late, as usual, but I could make it if I hurried. "Love you," I called out, kissing Sophie once more before grabbing my things. She smiled, her eyes glimmering with affection, and waved me off as I hurried out the door. The weather outside was gray, typical of an autumn morning in Portland. The fog lingered in the air, shrouding the streets in mist. I tossed my briefcase into the back seat of the car and started the engine. As I drove toward the office, I noticed something strange. The weight of my bag didn't feel right. I glanced over my shoulder and realized the mistake I'd made. I had grabbed Sophie's bag instead of my own. It wasn't a huge deal, but I need to go back and get mine. I quickly checked the time. There wasn't enough room to turn around. The investor meeting was too important. I sighed, running my fingers through my hair in frustration, then made the decision to go ahead with it. I'd deal with Sophie's scolding later. I opened her bag in the car, knowing I'd need to grab the paperwork I needed. But as I fumbled through her things, something caught my eye. There, hidden under a few tissues, was a small rectangular box. Curiosity piqued. I picked it up. It was a box of condoms, a brand we'd never used. My heart dropped. We hadn't used condoms in years, not since Sophie had gotten her tubes tied after Andrew was born. She had made that decision herself, and I'd agreed. We didn't need birth control anymore. So why was she carrying condoms in her bag? I stared at the box, my mind racing. It didn't make sense. I opened it with trembling hands, and my stomach lurched. A few condoms were missing. 3? 4? Had they been used? I felt the color drain from my face. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. The world seemed to slow down as I sat there, frozen in the driver's seat. It couldn't be. This had to be a mistake. Maybe they were old, forgotten. Maybe they were leftovers from when we had used them years ago. But no, I knew Sophie too well. She was meticulous about everything, including her bag. She would never leave something like this, forgotten and unused, in her purse. The box looked new. I noticed the expiration date printed on the side. It had been manufactured recently. This was not a mistake. My mind raced. The logical part of me knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I had to get more information. This couldn't be the full picture. There had to be an explanation. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and decided not to call her just yet. I couldn't face her on the phone. Not with this. Instead, I pulled out my wallet, pulled out a small keepsake photo. Our wedding photo. It was one I always kept with me, a reminder of our beginning. In the black and white image, Sophie looked radiant in her wedding dress, beaming at the camera. I had my arms around her, and we both looked so happy. I hadn't seen that kind of innocence in a long time. I pulled the remaining condoms from the box and carefully placed the photo inside. Closing it back up, I tossed the bag into the back seat and drove off. I wasn't going to the office today. I made an excuse about a family emergency and called in to cancel the meeting. The project would have to wait. As I drove home, my mind continued to race. Who could she have been seeing? I needed to know more, and I had a plan. But part of me hoped this was all just a misunderstanding. Maybe she'd forget about it. Maybe this wouldn't be as bad as I thought. But deep down I knew. I knew there was something I wasn't seeing. I parked the car in front of the house and sat there for a moment. The door opened, and Sophie stepped out onto the porch. She waved at me with that same smile that had captivated me all those years ago. But this time, something had changed. I spent the next few hours in a daze. I couldn't focus on anything else. I was pacing around the house, the photo of our wedding in my pocket. I kept looking at it, wondering how everything had gone wrong. Sophie had always been there, reliable, loving, the mother of our children. But now, with that one discovery, everything fell shattered. How'd I missed it all these years? It wasn't like me to second-guess things, but this wasn't just any issue. This was the foundation of our life together. Trust. It was supposed to be unshakable. But now, I found myself questioning everything. Who was she really? Who had she become? I pulled myself together long enough to focus on the next step. I needed answers. I wasn't going to confront her without knowing everything. The last thing I wanted to do was make a scene without being sure. So, I decided to do what I had to do. I had installed the GPS tracker in Sophie's car a while ago, for safety, just in case something ever happened while she was driving alone. Sophie had always been the one who ran errands, taking the kids to activities, picking up groceries. I never imagined I would need to use it like this. But now, it felt like my only option. I opened my laptop, logging into the GPS account. My heart beat faster as the map appeared, showing the routes Sophie had taken over the last few weeks. The details were clear. Every visit, every destination. And there it was, the place that stood out, a luxury condo near the riverfront district in Portland. It wasn't far from her usual routines, but I'd never heard her mention this address. The GPS data was chilling. Sophie had been going to that condo repeatedly over the past 3 months. It always happened on Tuesdays and Thursdays, between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m., the exact time she had told me she was either meeting friends or doing yoga. The same times, the same place. Over and over. I had to know more. I couldn't just sit back and keep wondering. I had to see it for myself. I grabbed my jacket, my pulse racing. I wasn't sure what I was going to find, but I had to do this. Sophie was either going to explain herself, or I was going to see the truth for what it was. I drove through Portland's busy streets, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I couldn't help but think of all the times Sophie had smiled at me, kissed me goodnight, and said she loved me, all the while carrying this secret. When I arrived at the condo complex, I parked across the street. The building was modern and sleek, with a doorman stationed at the front. It had the kind of polished look that came with a high price tag. I knew that Sophie couldn't afford this place on her own. And if she had been coming here regularly, then someone else had to be involved. I sat in the car for a while, watching the entrance. The fog had started to lift, but it still hung in the air, giving everything a muted feel. I tried to steady my breathing, but my thoughts were racing. Who was she seeing? Was it someone I knew? And why hadn't she told me? After what felt like an eternity, I came up with an idea. I couldn't just walk in and ask questions. It would raise suspicion. But I could do something that might give me the answers I needed. I walked to the trunk of the car and grabbed an empty cardboard box. I wasn't sure if this would work, but I figured it was worth a try. I crossed the street, walking toward the building's entrance. I pulled my collar up to hide my face and approached the security guard at the front desk. The guard looked up from his desk as I walked in, an older man with a serious expression. I forced a smile and said, "Good afternoon. I've got a delivery for apartment 1205, but the recipient isn't answering the intercom. Can you help me out?" The guard eyed me suspiciously, but then nodded. "Apartment 1205? I think the resident is out for now, but I can take the package for you." I hesitated, then pressed. "Are you sure? I just want to make sure it's the right place. I don't want to leave it with the wrong person." The guard looked me up and down. "Well, there's a woman who comes by regularly for 1205. I think she's one of Mr. Ryan O'Connor's guests. She drives a black SUV. Comes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, usually between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m. My stomach dropped. I wrote the name down, trying to keep my cool. "Thanks," I said, nodding quickly and backing away. I returned to the car, my hands shaking. I had a name I needed, Ryan O'Connor. I didn't know him, but I had a sinking feeling I was about to find out everything I needed to know. Sophie's secret was no longer a question. It was a fact. The man she had been seeing was real, and I was going to find out everything about him. I opened my phone and pulled up Instagram. It didn't take long for me to find Ryan O'Connor. He was a personal trainer with a significant following, nearly 50,000 followers. His feed was filled with photos of him at the gym, shirtless and flexing. As I scrolled through the photos, I felt disgust bubble up in my chest. Sophie had liked several of his posts, even leaving fire emojis in the comments. There was no denying it now. I felt sick, but I couldn't stop myself. I clicked on her profile. Sophie had been liking his posts for months, commenting on nearly everyone. Subtle exchanges that, on their own, might have seemed innocent. But taken together, it was clear she had been sleeping with him. This wasn't just a brief fling. This had been an ongoing affair. I closed the app, my hands trembling. It was all starting to make sense. The visits, the lies, the excuses. The condoms in her bag. Sophie had betrayed me. There was no more denying it. I needed to face her. But first, I needed to know everything about Ryan O'Connor. I didn't waste any time. I couldn't afford to. My mind was swirling with all the pieces that had finally fallen into place. Sophie had betrayed me. There was no turning back now. I needed to confront her, but I wasn't going to rush into it without being fully prepared. I needed to have all the answers first, everything I could find about this man, Ryan O'Connor. I couldn't confront Sophie without knowing exactly what I was up against. The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I spent hours searching through social media, using every tool at my disposal. I found out that Ryan wasn't just a personal trainer. He had been involved in the Portland fitness scene for years. He was well-connected, with sponsorships from various athletic brands and a loyal following. He had all the trappings of success, and that made it even harder to swallow. How could Sophie, my wife, fall for someone like him? I kept replaying all the memories of our life together, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had missed. All the signs were there, and yet I had turned a blind eye. I had trusted her, believed in her. But trust was a fragile thing, and once it was shattered, nothing could repair it. I continued my research, gathering evidence and screenshots. I even found a few videos of Ryan doing workout routines at the gym, his face and body plastered on every fitness brand advertisement. And Sophie had been liking his posts, commenting on his physique like he was the next big thing. It made my stomach churn. Then I found something else, something more telling. A post from Sophie herself, commenting on one of Ryan's photos. Her words were flirty, too friendly, and the comment she had left was clear. I can't wait to see you again. My heart sank. The photos, the comments, the hidden meetings, it was all coming together in a way I couldn't ignore any longer. I knew I had to confront her, but I couldn't do it yet. I had to prepare for this moment, and I couldn't afford to lose control. The hours dragged on as I thought about what I would say. How would I confront the woman I had built my life with? The mother of my children? The woman I thought I knew? Around noon, I decided to take a break and clear my head. I went to the living room, my phone in hand, still looking over the evidence. That's when I heard the front door open. Sophie had come home early. I wasn't expecting her. She was supposed to be at work. My heart skipped a beat as I quickly shoved my phone in my pocket and stood up from the couch. She came into the living room, looking cheerful, as usual. Hey, babe, I thought you had a meeting today, Sophie asked, smiling as she walked in. She didn't seem to notice the tension in the air. I stood still, unable to respond. I watched her walk toward me, her smile fading as she saw the look on my face. There was no avoiding it now. I had to face her. Sophie, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but cold. I know about everything. Her eyes widened in confusion, but she didn't say anything. She simply stared at me, waiting for me to elaborate. I found the condoms in your bag. I continued, my words sharp and precise. And I know about the man you've been seeing, Ryan O'Connor. I know about your affair. Sophie froze. Her face drained of color, and her lips parted as if she were about to speak, but no words came out. I could see the panic rising in her eyes, and I couldn't decide whether I felt anger or sadness more. What are you talking about? Sophie stammered, clearly trying to compose herself. Ethan, this isn't what you think. Don't lie to me. I snapped, my anger now bubbling to the surface. I've seen everything. Your messages, your comments, the trips to the condo. It's all there. It's been going on for months, hasn't it? You've been seeing him behind my back, and now I'm supposed to believe it's just some kind of misunderstanding. She took a step back, visibly shaken. I can explain, Ethan, she said, her voice cracking. It wasn't like that. You don't understand. I never meant for any of this to happen. My chest tightened. Then what was it, Sophie? If it wasn't intentional, then what was it? You've been lying to me every single day. All those nights you stayed out late. The excuses. The photos you've been liking. You thought I wouldn't find out? You thought I wouldn't see what was happening right under my nose. I was lonely, Sophie whispered, her voice barely audible now. I felt like you were so distant. Always at work, always busy. I needed someone to talk to, someone who listened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The pain in her voice only made everything worse. The betrayal stung like nothing I'd ever felt before, but I couldn't let her off the hook. Not now. Not after everything. Did you even think about our family? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and rage. Did you think about me? About the kids? This didn't just affect us, Sophie. This destroyed everything we built. Sophie collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I don't know what happened to me. I never want to hurt you. I don't know if I can believe that anymore, I said, my voice cold. This isn't something I can just forgive. It's not just a mistake. You've been sleeping with him for months. How can I ever trust you again after this? Sophie's sobs filled the room, but I couldn't find it in me to comfort her. The hurt was too fresh, too raw. The trust between us had been shattered in a way that couldn't be easily mended. I stood up and walked toward the door. I need some space, Sophie, I said. We need time to think about this. I need time to think about whether this is something we can fix or if it's too late. As I left the room, Sophie's voice called after me, but I didn't turn around. I needed to be alone with my thoughts. I needed time to process the enormity of what had just been revealed. My marriage, my life, had just been turned upside down. The next few days felt like a blur. Sophie didn't leave the house, and neither did I. We both stayed in different rooms. Our once bustling home, now eerily silent. The weight of what had happened hung over us like a thick fog. I could feel the tension every time I walked past her, and every time she looked at me, her eyes full of guilt and regret. But no words came. Neither of us knew how to begin the conversation again after everything that had been revealed. I spent my time alone, pacing, thinking, and trying to make sense of it all. There was so much I wanted to say, so much I wanted to scream at her, but I knew that getting lost in anger wouldn't help. The betrayal ran deeper than just this affair. It was everything that led up to it. The lies, the secrecy, the neglect. I couldn't understand how Sophie, the woman I had trusted for so many years, could do this to me. To us. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Sophie came to find me in the living room. She was hesitant, her hands wringing together as she stood in the doorway. I didn't look up at her right away. I couldn't. My emotions were still too raw, too fragile. But I knew I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. Ethan, she said quietly, her voice trembling. Can we talk? I finally met her gaze, my heart heavy. What's there left to say, Sophie? My voice was harsher than I intended, but I couldn't help it. I know everything. I've seen the messages. I know who he is. I know when it started. I know you do, she whispered, her voice breaking. But I need you to understand something. This wasn't just about him. It was about me. I've been feeling lost for so long, Ethan. You were always so distant. You were always at work. I don't know when it happened, but I started feeling like I didn't matter anymore. Her words cut deeper than I expected. I had always tried to provide for our family, to make sure we had everything we needed. But in the process, I had neglected the most important thing, the connection between Sophie and me. I'm sorry, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. I should have talked to you. I should have told you how I felt. But instead, I turned to someone else. And I hate myself for it. I looked away, trying to suppress the anger that rose in me. You should have talked to me, Sophie. We've been through everything together. We've built a life, a family. You didn't think of that when you were with him? Did you even think about how much this would destroy everything? Her sobs grew louder, and she collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. I never meant for it to go this far, Ethan. It just happened, and now I can't take it back. I stood there for a long time, my mind in turmoil. I had always believed that trust was the foundation of a marriage. But trust, once broken, was not easily repaired. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe her words, but another part of me knew that I couldn't just erase what had happened. Not yet. How long, Sophie? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How long have you been seeing him? Her shoulders trembled as she answered, 8 months. It started in February. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. 8 months. Almost an entire year. During that time, we had celebrated birthdays, holidays, and family vacations. I had been blind to the truth, thinking that everything was fine when it wasn't. Sophie had been living a double life, and I had been completely unaware. I can't just forget this, I said, finally sitting down across from her. I need to know everything. I need the truth, Sophie. How did it start? How did you meet him? Did he know you were married? Sophie wiped her eyes, struggling to find the words. I met him at the gym. He was new, offering personal training sessions. He was attentive, kind, and he made me feel seen. You were always so busy, Ethan. You were always working, and I felt invisible. I didn't know what to do. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. My chest tightened as I heard her words. I had always prided myself on providing for our family, on being the dependable husband and father. But in doing so, I had lost touch with Sophie. I hadn't seen the cracks forming in our marriage, and I hadn't noticed how much she was suffering. You think that justifies it? I asked, struggling to keep my composure. You think that because I was working too much, it gives you an excuse to betray me? To sleep with another man? Sophie's face contorted in guilt. No, Ethan, there's no excuse for what I did. I know that, but I felt like I was suffocating. I didn't know how to reach you. I thought maybe this was the way out. The pain in her voice was real, but the damage had been done. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rainy Portland skyline. I couldn't stop thinking about how everything had changed in an instant. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything that led to it. The distance between us, the missed conversations, the growing isolation. I don't know what to do with this, Sophie, I said, my voice barely audible. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Sophie's voice cracked as she responded. I'll do whatever it takes, Ethan. I know I don't deserve it, but please, I'll do anything to make this right. But I wasn't ready to make any decisions. I needed time. Time to process, to think, to decide what came next. I wasn't ready to let go of everything we had built, but I also couldn't ignore the betrayal that had shattered our relationship. I need some space, Sophie, I said, my voice low. I can't make any decisions right now. I need to think about this. As I left the room, I felt a strange sense of numbness. The weight of the betrayal was heavy, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. Whatever happened next, it would be my choice. I needed to take control of my own life again. The next few weeks felt like a blur of emotions, arguments, silences, and moments of fleeting clarity. Sophie tried everything she could to apologize and make things right, but I wasn't ready to listen. Every time she spoke, I saw the image of her with Ryan in my mind, those stolen moments that we had both ignored, the ones that ultimately led to this mess. The kids noticed the tension. Olivia, who was 15, was perceptive enough to pick up on the changes in the house. She had always been close to Sophie, but the space between them grew as Olivia began to sense the shift in our family dynamic. Andrew, younger and more innocent, simply asked why Mom and Dad weren't talking anymore. I wasn't prepared to explain things to them. Not yet. I didn't want them to feel the burden of this betrayal, especially not at their age. But the more I tried to keep my distance, the more I realized I couldn't live in this limbo forever. I began spending more time at work, immersing myself in projects to avoid facing the growing emptiness in the house. But no matter how much I threw myself into my career, I couldn't escape the fact that everything had changed. Sophie and I weren't the same people anymore. Our relationship, built on years of shared history, had become unrecognizable. One day, after a long meeting at the office, I found myself sitting in my car, staring at the streetlights outside. It was a quiet evening, and I felt a strange sense of finality in the air. My phone buzzed. It was Sophie again. Ethan, can we talk? Please. I know I've hurt you, but I'm trying. I don't know what else to do. Please, let's fix this together. I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen. I knew she was trying. I knew she was sorry. But it wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It was about trust. And trust, once broken, was something I wasn't sure I could ever restore. I drove home that night, the decision weighing on me. When I walked through the front door, I found Sophie sitting on the couch, her face drawn with worry. She stood up when she saw me, her eyes searching my face for some sign of what I was thinking. "I'm ready," I said quietly, breaking the silence. "We need to talk." Sophie's breath caught in her throat, but she didn't say anything. She just nodded, her eyes full of expectation. I walked into the living room and sat across from her, taking a deep breath. The truth was I was tired of the uncertainty. I couldn't keep living like this, caught between hope and pain, between memories and reality. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sophie. I don't know if I can trust you again. What you did, it hurt me more than you can imagine. I feel like a fool." Sophie's face crumpled as she reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I swear to you, I never meant for any of this to happen. I was lost, Ethan, and I know that's no excuse, but I was desperate. I needed someone to see me, to care, and I made the biggest mistake of my life." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words. The silence between us stretched on. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I knew that wouldn't help. I needed to make a decision. Not for Sophie, not for anyone else, but for myself. "I've been thinking a lot about what comes next," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can stay in this marriage. The trust has been shattered, and I don't know how to rebuild it. I don't know if it's possible." Sophie's face fell, but she didn't pull away. She was silent, waiting for me to continue. "I'm not saying this to hurt you, Sophie," I went on, trying to keep my emotions in check. "But I need to be honest with myself. I need to be honest with you. Maybe it's time for us to separate. Maybe we need some space for both of us to figure out who we are now after everything that's happened." Sophie's breath hitched as tears welled up in her eyes. She reached out for me again, but I gently pulled my hand away. "I don't want to hurt you, but I can't keep pretending like everything's okay. I need time. I need to figure out what's best for me, for the kids. I need to heal." The room was heavy with the silence that followed. Sophie didn't try to argue or plead anymore. She simply nodded, her face pale. "I understand," she whispered. "I'll respect your decision, whatever you need." I stood up, my mind racing. "I don't know where this is going, Sophie. I don't know what the future holds. But for now, I think we both need to take some time apart." Sophie nodded again, this time more resolutely. "I'll leave. I'll stay with my sister for a while, if that's okay." I didn't answer immediately. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control, something that had already started and could no longer be undone. I needed space. I needed clarity. "I think that's for the best," I said finally, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. As Sophie grabbed a few things and left the house, I sat down in the quiet living room, feeling the weight of the last few weeks crash down on me. I wasn't sure what was next. Divorce? Reconciliation? Time would tell. But for the first time in a long time, I knew I was making the right decision for me.